Welcome to Oh, the Places We've Been, Jerusalem Encounters 8th event. I've been organizing events. Oh, thank you. It is very, very exciting. Sometimes I'm like, oh, how do I do it? And I'm like, I don't know, I just do it one at a time. I'm very, very happy to have you here tonight. And I guess maybe it's good that it's like crazy stormy weather outside so that it's not too crowded in here. I'm really, really happy that you guys came out. Welcome. So the way that this evening is going to work is everyone has a program. Do you guys have a program? Yes. So we have all the readers set up in here. And so I'm not going to be introducing each person because we just, we'll just go according to the program. And in between storytellers, people from the audience are going to be invited to come up and read from Open Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. And I actually orchestrated the whole thing perfectly so that, and even the topics matter. Well, okay, whatever. No, fine. Let's not build up expectations. Okay. So that's how it's going to go. And I think that David, the owner of Tmol Shilshom, is just going to say some words of welcome, and then we'll begin. And we're going to have first person come up to read because we're actually going to read the beginning of the book before we have the first storyteller. Did I introduce myself? Oh my goodness.
Who are you?
That's what happens when you become really famous and you think everyone knows you already. Damn.
Have your autograph?
Okay, my name is Deena Levenstein, and I am the one that's organizing these events. You can read a little bit about me, as we know, on the back. You can check out online, about Jerusalem Encounters, which is I, and with a lot of times help with David, I organize events that are supposed to be meaningful events that connect people to people and people to Jerusalem. And you're more than welcome to connect with me through the different websites and Facebook and all that here. All right, David.
Can I have one of these? Right, תודה רבה, ברוכים הבאים. You guys are very, very brave to come here on a night like this, and we're proud of you.
And grateful.
When Deena came up with this idea a month ago or whenever, I thought, wow, what a great idea. I'm always inspired by what Deena does, and it's a journey all by itself. And this one in particular, and as I just told Deena, this is part 1, and we'll definitely have the sequel when the sun eventually will rise. Because I feel for the people who are missing it because they thought it's too cold or too wet to come out, right? And plus, we're never short of סיפורי מסע, איך אומרים את זה באנגלית?
אין דבר כזה באנגלית.
איך? Travel stories, right? All of us have some. And since I knew there were many speakers, I told Deena, I'm not going to tell mine. If I start telling mine, we'll never get anywhere else either. But I have an image in my mind that I want to share with you. Before I do that, I don't want to forget to tell you 2 Tmol Shilshom announcements, if I may, very quick. One is we'll pass around cards where you can leave us your emails, and you may want to know about our programs because we usually have interesting things. And having said that, I want to mention to you that in our December program, which we're now publishing, both, we have one thing that is going to be also in English. Usually we have like one thing per month in English, and this is going to be a very interesting event. It's a new tradition we've started of reading marathons. And the next one is going to be about the book My Family and Other Animals. Anybody has read the book? By Gerald Darrell. You don't want to miss this, believe me. I just Googled this up and found out 370 million entries on this book. So it's a very popular book by an amazing British zoologist who tells the stories of his childhood on the Greek island of Corfu. It's really one of those amazing books where somebody is sharing their childhood memories in a way that you cannot stay indifferent to. It's just full of magic. You want to be here December 7th, Sunday. So here's the image I had from the first journey I remember. When I was a kid, our parents took us, even though we didn't have a car. This was a big stretch, but we had a Bnei Pesach trip. My dad was a teacher, and the long vacation before Pesach was the time we had off, and we took the buses, schlepped those suitcases. I don't know how we did it now. Like now, when you throw everything in the car, it's like, and it's also never easy, right? Going on a trip. So I'm full of admiration to my parents for having done that and having introduced me and my sister to a big world here in Israel. The first stop we ever did on the first trip I remember is Benazrat, in the city of Nazareth. And I don't remember anything from Nazareth except that we had a little picnic because of course Mom packed up everything in a Tzeidanit, and all the way from Ramat Gan, 3 buses at least, we get to Nazareth with a fresh breakfast. And we park somewhere, we sit somewhere, and we didn't have cold water, but this Arab lady walks towards us, I don't know where from, with a tray with cool water, with vase of cool water and glasses. And she was all covered up. She never said a word. We probably said Toda Rabba. And she left us the tray. And these days when tension is so up, I remember again this probably first time I ever met an Arab, even though I never exchanged a word with her. I learned something about hospitality. I learned something about human interaction, about just being a mensch. I'll never forget that. So Deena, I'm really glad to kick off your event, and I can't wait to hear good stories, please. And whoever speaks wants to be near the mic, because you have the illusion here that everybody hears you, but if you're not near the mic, nobody hears you.
Welcoming us so warmly to Tmol Shilshom. Okay, who wants to be the first reader? Please. This actually is a special copy of the book.
Do I have to autograph it?
So you have to be really careful with it, because my little sister, Rachel, it's her copy, and I gave it to her as a present, and I wrote inside about how she was 7 at the time. Now today's her 15th birthday. And she's doing the Queen's wave. And I wrote inside that it's the kind of book that you like when you're 7, 27, and 107, and so she should take really good care of it, and then I'm taking it out in a crazy storm. So guys, please, just be nice to it.
You're basically just reading until you get to the end of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Oh the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own. And you know what you know. And you are the guy who'll decide where to go. You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you'll say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, You're too smart to go down any not-so-good street. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town.
Is that it? No.
I can stop there.
Well, no, till
Well,
you
there's a couplet.
What?
Are we being filmed right now?
Okay, right.
I have to read this.
Yeah, you read that part.
Okay, all right, okay. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It's opener there, in the wide open air.
Good voice, good voice. Okay.
Hi everybody. Shalom. My name is Yair. I'm here to tell you a little bit about a trip I took to India 2 years ago. So, I had a lot of trouble actually coming up with what I'm still not quite sure exactly what I'm going to say. I think many people who've traveled to the east or to somewhere like India, it's really, it's an experience in a different kind of a world. It's something that is difficult to put in terms of the place where I'm at the moment. Especially considering the focus which I had over there, which was to do with meditation. So that comes to the title of this little snippet, which is the only living boy in New Delhi. Those of us who know the original Simon and Garfunkel song, it is related to the content. The idea is really, of course, that Delhi is a huge city with, I don't know exactly how many people, but if you visit especially, it's very obvious how many people there are. And even so, there is a feeling of being alone, of being the only person over there. Especially if you're coming from somewhere so different, such as South Africa via Israel. It's a place which is different, which is, and where my whole trip in India especially was an attempt to try and find the meaning that I was looking for, in the ways that I did, and which just isn't time to go into much of now. I wanted to share just one or two stories and end with a poem. The interesting thing is that one has the picture of going to visit India, of an Israeli with a big backpack, and I don't know, going and partying on the beaches or whatever it is. I suppose they have all different kinds and different stereotypes. So on the one hand, as an Aliya of a couple of years, I was kind of participating in that image, and I was an Israeli going backpacking with a big backpack. I didn't go to the beaches though, but I was trying to find my own way. So one or two stories. The one story was soon after arriving in Delhi, which is kind of blows away anything you're kind of holding on to. It's a big city, full of noise, full of pollution, full of dirt, full of poverty. It really is a shocker. It's something that takes getting used to, and maybe you can never really get used to. But it's really something, a powerful and a strong experience. So I was wandering around with this massive backpack. I took just too many things. Speaking about meditation, I was holding on to a lot of stuff. I was holding on to how much money I had, which wasn't much. I was holding on to this huge pack of medicines, which my father, who's a doctor, had suggested I take. And in the event, of course, that I get bitten by a rabid dog or something, I'd have the stuff with me to do something with it. It took me a while to learn to kind of let go of that, which is what I was looking for anyway. But I was lost. Quite literally, I was looking for a place to catch a taxi. And carrying this huge bag on my back, I eventually went up to a linen store, and I saw this well-dressed, bearded Sikh, dignified-looking man, and I said, "Can you please help me to find a taxi?" And he said, "Sure." And what was amazing was he left his store to his attendants, and he started walking with me in the middle of Delhi. He said, "Come, I'll take you." Walked along with me for a couple of minutes and told me a story about Winston Churchill. And one thing that was really, firstly, the kindness to an obvious stranger was really powerful to me. But secondly, he had quite a nice message, which was, he said, the kindness that I'm giving to you over here in helping you in your directions, I ask that you also give to some other stranger, some other tourist that you might come across in the future. So pay it forward. Well, not the words that he used, but that was the idea. It was really touching. And just from a cultural point of view, my experience of the Sikhs, the little that I had to do with them, was really quite special. I was quite impressed. So, just to give a bit of context to the poem, which I'd like to end with, I'm quite aware of the 7-minute, kind of.
I got my point across.
Yeah. Okay, so as I said, I was someone coming from a bit of a different background, but also I'd like to emphasize that I was in India looking for whatever it was I was looking for, but I was there as a Jew and I came back as a Jew. Part of what I'd like to say here is that it's possible. I was not looking for any alternative to the tradition with which I grew up. I was looking for something to help me to get a little deeper, or to connect to myself, or whatever it was I was looking for. I'm not quite sure. But so it's possible and it's doable. I bought dishes and I toveled them in the Ganges. I went and for those who don't know what that means, it means to take, when we buy dishes, according to halakha, one dips them into a body of living water in order to be able to use them for cooking and food. So I did that. I made sure to wash them very thoroughly afterwards. The Ganges, especially in Rishikesh, or
What's the Ganges?
the Ganges, thank you.
You can say both parts of that sentence.
Okay, right. So the Ganges, thank you. The Ganges is a huge river that flows through India. It's viewed as holy by many people, many Indians and religions. It's technically a body of living water. In halakha, in Jewish law, there's certain bodies of water that are considered connected to the higher parts or higher spiritually they afford purity. So without getting into too much more detail, but the Ganges, the sea, these big bodies of natural water that are connected to a source, a river that's big and flowing, that has that kind of presence, that's considered one of those. So it's ironic that this river, which is being worshipped by so many Hindus, actually is a kosher mikveh. So I was very glad to dip my dishes in it and cook for myself, try to find vegetables and food and all to keep kosher. Had my tzitzit mostly tucked in, had my kippah, and meditating with people from all kind of religions, and it was a very interesting experience, but it was doable, and I was, if anything, perhaps it strengthened my feeling of being a Jew and put it in a different context. So I will end. So here's this poem which I wrote. One of the things that was special to me was to be able to see the Dalai Lama, who's someone who I really respect. Again, I wrote a poem about it which I'll read, but I'd like to just emphasize that this is not coming from the point of view of a replacement, a spiritual connection, but the ability, I think, which I really tried to experience on my trip, of seeing and appreciating spirituality in people from other places as well, and ultimately to deepen the awareness of the spirituality in the Jewish tradition as well, which we can talk about another time. So the poem is called Seeing Dalai Lama. It was written just about 2 years ago in Ganj, which is a part of Dharamsala in northern India. Okay. There's a reference, just 2 points. The one is this: there's no worship of any kind. I mentioned that I'm kneeling, but it's kneeling in a position, a meditative kind of position. And secondly, when I mentioned David's candelabrum, that means, well, we'll see. It's the Tehillim of the chapter of Psalms, which is often depicted in synagogues and shuls in the position of a menorah, also related to this time of year, of a candelabrum, which could be taken as a meditation, especially looking at it in that shape, which is something else to discuss another time. Okay, here it goes. I knelt, tendons gently burning, on thick maroon, on holy blue. Eyes closed, and a strong suggestion to calm, be still. No, I can't. It was strong to my stomach, and my mind, it spun its theories, but I gently set my focus aside. I was borne by the waves of a power, of an energy, and stillness was not possible. It was not the setup of this moment now. The belly-deep chanting pulled and churned my tension region. I softly chanted David's candelabrum, watching the curves of its branches behind my eyes. Time to stop. Mind is waiting, watching. Cameras, waiting minutes, till he treads in gentle entourage along into my naked sight. My eyes are teared, I gently sob. This mind chatters somewhat, yet it speaks but weakly underneath this emotion. I am here, I am now. He passes on beyond my eye frame, and I move smoothly back to a calm. Mind is louder, brought to focus. My back is hurting. I pass over monastic butter. Quietly, I pack my bag, embrace my shoes, some goodbye smiles, and leave. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to read next? From the book, I mean. You want to read? Okay, great. It's not that much to read, you know. It's like split up into like 9, 10 sections. It's a short book.
It's reading till it's the end of this.
It's very good.
Out there, things can happen, and frequently do. To people as brainy and footsie as you,
Talk a little closer to you.
and when things start to happen, don't worry. Don't stew. Just go along. You'll start happening too. Oh, the places you'll go.
I've never heard such a dramatic rendition of Dr. Seuss.
He's been practicing.
All right, Rib. How do you pronounce your name when it's shortened? Rib. Okay. And meanwhile, start building up your, your courage to come and read next.
Sorry, I know it's obviously very. Just talk really, like move it so it's like right next to your mouth.
Hello. So speaking about courage, I will introduce myself in a moment, but this is improv, the improv moment. I've been sitting at my table and we've been laughing that we really should be saying to Tfilat HaDerech, we're going on a journey. We could all hold hands, close our eyes, and say Tfilat HaDerech. And by the way, I say Tfilat HaDerech every day. I feel like in this country at these times, in the world at large, we need to on our physical journey. But even if we lived in the most peaceful of places where there was no concern and wild happenings, we're on a journey every day, a journey of life. And even if we're in our homes or in our jobs, I think Tfilat HaDerech is warranted on a regular basis. That's just my little take. I don't have any halachic authority on that. So, okay, well, thank you all for coming and listening. My name is Riv, and I'll be reading Fiji Within, an adaptation from my blog, Riv's Rivers of Life's Musings. And if you like this, please feel free to become a follower. Fiji Within. I love to travel. I am grateful for this. The impulse to travel is one of the hopeful symptoms of life. Agnes Repliere. But once the travel bug bites, there is no known antidote. And I know that I shall be happily infected until the end of my life. Michael Palin. I have thankfully experienced some wonderful countries and exotic places thus far, yet the journeys are ongoing. Destinations rich with the histories of the slave trade and the last English colonies in Puerto Rico, ancient cobblestones in Europe, castles in the Scottish Highlands, glacier lakes in New Zealand, fields of sunflowers in Ukraine, majestic alpine beauty in Switzerland, home to the cows with bells. I have crossed the Atlantic Ocean to the Bahamas and the Pacific Ocean to Hawaii and Fiji. I've been a cowgirl on my horse on a ranch in the Wild West, surrounded by the majesty of the Rocky Mountain Ranges, like a character in Legends of the Fall. I've fly fished along meandering rivers, like brothers Norman and Paul from Montana, in a river runs through it. I've lived in a villa in Tuscany where my days were filled with the beauty and the decadence of drinking wine, eating focaccia, and relaxing in the sun with fruit and cheese platters. I've swum in the aqua waters of the Hawaiian Islands and relished the untouched beauty of Palm Cove, Australia and Tasmania. I've climbed glaciers, hiked and biked mountains, and explored native Fijian villages on river safaris, trekked through snowstorms, camped in the sunshine, picked berries along the coastline, and travelled by boat and by helicopter. I've laughed on roller coasters in amusement parks on the west coast of America and cried on the romantic east coast of Maine. I've spoken foreign languages, dressed in cultural garb, and tasted ethnic foods, seen the highest mountains and the deepest valleys, and heard the sounds of tropical birds and jungle animals. But, despite my awesome travels, there is always more to explore. And I still believe that the best way to travel is in your mind and through your imagination. Apart from being able to go everywhere and anywhere, this travel style sure trumps 30 hours plus, crossing over from one hemisphere to the other, feeling cramped and eating plastic meals. So, last year I opted for the more time and cost-effective option. I travelled in my mind, explored in my imagination, and created a beautiful oasis and haven, my very own local Fiji. I decorated my bedroom as Fiji. It was decked out in colours, oranges, greens and blues. A driftwood dresser, a Fijian landscape framed with driftwood, a white leather queen bed, an orange lamp and ottoman, and an aqua blue and green indoor hammock. A huge window afforded me a view of the green and orange leaves on the large trees nearby. By day, Fiji was filled with bright sunlight. By night, Fiji was lit by scented candles with a view to the inky black sky, a hue of humble moonlight and starlight. Creating my Fijian haven was about starting to create a strong core within, a safe place that was real and calm and at peace with all. There were no airport reservations, no taxis, no airport lines, no hotel reservations, no suitcases and no chaos. It was all easy, right here, at peace, at home, quiet, within. A place where I could relax, be happy, laugh and surf. Well, at least until a tropical cyclone hit my island. That was on the days when the place was a mess. To be honest, I cheated, for I have previously physically been to Fiji. I was lucky to be able to mirror my imagination on my experience. One of my most poignant memories, which constantly replays in my mind, is boating across from the island resort to a quiet, secluded island, singing and dancing by my lonesome in the sand, and then cooling off in the aqua waters. And when I got hungry, a native Fijian helped me crack open my coconut, letting go, letting flow. So, next time you crave a vacation and feel the urge to get away, think about the beauty that you have right here and right now. Use your unlimited imagination, and if you need to, draw trigger strength and creativity from your memories and feelings of past holidays. Simply light a candle, burn some incense, and play some background music. Breathe. You too can create an amazing getaway to rejuvenate all of your body, heart and soul. At least for a little while, a vacation that is both time and cost effective. Let your mind start a journey through a strange new world. Leave all thoughts of the world you knew before. Let your soul take you where you long to be. Close your eyes, let your spirit start to soar, and you'll live as you've never lived before. Eric Fromm, With friendship, fun, fulfillment, and Fiji, Fiji awaits. Thank you.
So, it's really not that scary to read Dr. Seuss. Actually, I'm a very slow reader, so when I read it, I'm like reading, oh, the places you'll go. And then my older sister, she reads it so fast you can't even hear the words. So, I guess maybe it is nerve-wracking to read Dr. Seuss. Who would like to read next? Yeah, sure. Are you going to do like one line? Yeah. Okay, cool.
So you're just reading until, like, you're just reading this and this exactly. Okay. Do you want to do one page and I'll do the next page? Sure. No, I think it would be fun if you did one line.
Fine, one line.
Let's start.
You'll be on your way up.
You'll be seeing great heights.
Yeah, you have to talk into the microphone so everyone can hear.
You'll be seeing great sights.
You'll join the high flyers.
Who soar to high heights.
You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed.
You'll pass the whole game and you'll soon take the lead.
Wherever you fly, you'll be best of the best.
Wherever you go, you will top all the rest.
Okay, fine. I guess it does take talent. All right, Abby.
So, thank you all for being here. I was afraid I'd have no friends. Can you hear me? Okay, well, hope that you can hear me. Raise your hand if you can't hear me. Okay, great. I guess we're good. We're good. I invited a lot of people, and I was afraid when I walked in here that I would have no friends, but I was so excited to see, first of all, Hannah, and also people that I know from like a wedding like 2 months ago, a Shabbat meal like a month ago, the street in Jerusalem, a tweet up like 4 years ago. I feel like everybody that I've passed in Jerusalem is in this room, so thank you all for being here. And thank you, Deena, for coordinating this. And that way I know, like, if I have nothing funny to say, I can just say your name and we'll clap. It's great. This is a great trick. But anyhow, I thought of telling a story of when I traveled to India, or when I was in the rainforest in Peru, or when I got attacked in Manchester. But in the end I decided that those were all too cliche, so I would instead tell a story about travel in Israel. No, I'm serious. You know, I just moved to Israel 4 months ago. I made Aliya at that point. And prior to that, I made sure that I alternated vacations. One vacation I would go anywhere in the world, and the next vacation I would come to Israel. And so on one of those vacations when I was in Israel, about 2 years ago I think, I decided I wanted to do something that's good for the country. You know, I did enough eating in restaurants, I did enough enjoying museums. It was time for me to do something good for Israel. I wasn't able to live here at the time, but you know, I'll try to contribute in my own way. And it was a time when there were a lot of rockets in Sderot. You might have heard of that time. So I decided I would go to Sderot in order to shop. I would spend money in the stores where people weren't shopping at the time. So I went to the Tachana Merkazit, and in fact I'd done some research, and I said, you know, where else can I go on the way to Sderot? I want to make this a trip. So I looked on the map, I searched, I made a short radius around there, and I found that Netivot is right near Sderot. Netivot is another city, and there are really exciting things to do in Netivot. And I want to tell you what, exactly. The Baba Sali, this like mystical Sephardic rabbi, is buried in Netivot. So I figured, people claim that they experience miracles when they go to his grave. So I would try that. It's on the way. It's really not out of the way. So I would first go to Netivot, and then I would go to Sderot. And it would be a day. It would be an amazing day. So I went to the Tachana Merkazit, the bus station. I asked, how do I get to Sderot? People told me there's a sherut, there's this small van around the back, you can find it. If you ask like 5 more people and they tell you to go straight, it's there. So that's what I did, and I found this shirut, and there was a line with like 10 really rude people that were all standing in line, fighting with each other, and me. So I stood in this line, and I was waiting for the shirut, and I was a little bit nervous that I wouldn't actually get on because it started to fill up. But luckily, a miracle happened, and I got the very last seat. What wasn't a miracle was that when I wanted to go to sleep, I was sitting next to that guy. You know that guy who wants to talk to you when you want to go to sleep? So I was sitting next to him, and he had a really, really long and kind of uninteresting story to tell me. Something about the fact that he was really rich. He owned a chain of 3 different spas in Sderot. I think when he said spas, he meant something else. But anyhow, he owned these spas, and then one day he went to go fix the dude on the roof, and he fell off, and he broke both his legs, and he was in the hospital for like 3 months. And I was trying to empathize and sympathize, but it wasn't working because I wanted to go to sleep, so instead I was nodding and saying yes. And he told me this whole story, and he's going on about how his friends abandoned him because he lost his businesses, because he was in the hospital for too long, and he realized there's no one to rely on but God, and that's the lesson that I should take from his story. And I was like, wow, isn't it great that I'm in Israel so I could hear this story? So anyhow, as I'm done listening to him, suddenly a voice from 2 rows in front of me, in a Russian accent, calls out really loudly, "You speak English?" And I said, well, yes. And she said, "You're hired." I said, "Hired for what? What am I getting myself into?" And she told me, "You're hired to be an English teacher today." And I said, "I am, but I have plans. You know, I have to go to Sderot and to Netivot. I have an appointment with the Baba Sali." And she looks at me and she says, "I don't care. I'm going to come with you to the kever of the Baba Sali." And suddenly I had Anya and her friend Natasha, these middle-aged Russian women who had somehow hired me to teach English and were now accompanying me to the kever of the Baba Sali. So the 3 of us are like looking for the stop, as if there's a stop, and so I say, "Does anyone know where the kever of the Baba Sali is?" And all these people are confused and ignore me. Maybe they just ignored me, they weren't confused. But anyhow, so suddenly Anya screams out to the bus driver, "Can you stop at the kever of the Baba Sali?" And he looks up kind of surprised and he says, "Who wants to go to the kever of the Baba Sali?" And suddenly Anya and Natasha together scream out, "We want to go to the kever of the Baba Sali!" And he's like, "All right, fine, we'll stop there." And I was like, wow, they're so much more enthusiastic than I am. Why can't I get excited like that? So we get off at the kever of the Baba Sali, and there's you're basically in like the middle of the desert, and there's like nothing around you except for a stand, an agala, on wheels, and a guy selling everything you need to go to the kever of the Baba Sali, to have this spiritual experience. He was selling amulets, because everybody needs their amulet. He was selling arak that was blessed by somebody or other, and he was selling naknikiot. Because of course you need your naknikia when you go to the kever of the Baba Sali. So anyhow, we go to the kever of the Baba Sali, we split up because they have to go to the women's side and I have to go to the men's side. And I see amazing things at this kever. I see there's a sign on top of the kever that says, "Please don't put your food on top of the grave." And I'm just imagining like Dudu the taxi driver and his shawarma balafa, and he's like, "Hey, I should pray, so let me put this here." And the tchina is dripping down, and he's like, "I'll get that." So anyhow, to the left you can see a cash register on a desk. And there's a hole cut in the mechitza, so women can look through to the cash register, which was there for a really important reason, and there was like a bell next to it for you to ring, and a sign said, "If you want a bracha, if you want to be blessed, ring this bell and a rabbi will come and bless you, 25 shekel." I was like, wow, this is amazing. So we leave the kever, I meet Natasha and Anya on the road. We have to walk about 10 minutes to get to the bus to Sderot. So we start walking, and it's like the summer, so we're sweating and walking, and Anya gives me this lecture, this drasha, this Dvar Torah, and she's like, You know, in order to do mitzvot, you have to suffer. Tzarich lisbol. You have to suffer a little bit. You see, we're sweating, we're walking. You gotta suffer to do a mitzvah. And I'm like, okay, great. So we're suffering. I can feel the sweat. I can feel the suffering. It's like leaving Egypt. And suddenly, out of nowhere, a miracle happens, and a broken jalopy station wagon pulls up with a Breslov chassid in it, and he rolls down the window and says, "Hey, do you guys want to ride to the bus?" And Natasha and I are like already in the back seat of the car, and Anya starts screaming at him. She's like, "Who do you think you are? I was just telling them that you have to suffer to do mitzvot. There's no way we're getting in your car, you and your mazgan, no way." And he looks at Anya and he says, "How dare you tell me not to do a mitzvah? I'm trying to offer you a ride. Who do you think you are?" And the two of them are yelling and screaming, and Natasha and I are in the back seat and we're like, "You can leave her, let's just go." And he refused. So we took her with us, and finally they're fighting in the front seat, and we get to the bus and we thank him, but she doesn't thank him, and we get off. And so we go to Sderot, and we take the bus, and I know that I'm teaching a class, right? So I've never been a teacher before in my life, and I was hired for no money, of course. And she's like, "Your class is in an hour, I'll give you a tour." She gives me a tour of Sderot. Finally we get to this class, and this class is not just a regular class in a school, but it's a class for Israeli teenagers who couldn't pass the regular class during the school year because of their good behavior. And now they have to take summer classes, and I was to be their teacher that day because their teacher had to leave because she quit. And I have no experience, so I was their teacher, and they told me it's going to be easy. All you have to do is talk to them in English. So I said, "Great, I can speak English." So I go ahead and I start talking to them, and they're staring at me with this like really blank look, as if they don't understand anything that I say, which I realized was true. They didn't understand anything I said. So I decided it would be nicer if I spoke to them in Hebrew and like threw in a few English words, which I did. And then I got bored of that, so I figured I'll talk to them. So that was my biggest mistake. Don't ask these Israeli teenagers any questions. First question, why do you want to learn English? First person, so that I can read signs, that's reasonable. Second person, so that I can get the heck out of here. I'm like, all right, let's try another question. I'm like, what's your favorite word in English? This was a terrible question. The first person starts out not so bad. Shut up. I'm like, that's not really nice to say to your teacher. And the next person, stupid. It's not so nice either. And it just devolved from there, getting worse and worse. And I didn't realize that the custom in Israel is that when you curse, you also have to throw stuff. And so they're throwing like shoes and apples and books. And I realized it was time to dismiss them. And class was over. And I also retired then from being a teacher. So anyhow, they introduced me to a guy named Boris, who was a refusenik from Russia. We spoke for many hours, and I was captivated by his story about how he moved to Sderot to teach the Russians about Judaism, which was great. And then when I left him, I said to Anya, "Okay, I'll go home now. How do I get the bus?" She's like, "Oh, there are no buses. You wanted to go home?" And she's like, "You missed the last bus by like hours." And I'm like, "Oh no." And she's like, "So come home with me. You can stay at my family's house." So I go there, I stay. She introduces me to everyone. Her daughter Sveta, who was not so religious, and her son-in-law Yossi, who after his father had passed away took to saying Tehillim all day, really all day. And they decided that I should be their marriage counselor to help them to settle all these differences, which I had no skills to do, but I listened to them almost all night anyhow. And Anya told me, here you're in Sderot, there's a risk that there are some Qassam rockets. If that happens, let me show you where the miklat is. And she said, but Natasha is going to be sleeping in there, so only go to the miklat if there's actually a rocket falling. And I sort of looked at her like, how am I going to know if there's a rocket falling? If there's a siren, I'm going to the miklat. She's like, don't wake up Natasha. So in the end, I slept on a leather couch that my face stuck to because of the heat and the sweat and Sderot and no mazgan. And I basically didn't sleep because I was afraid that there would be a rocket and I couldn't run to the miklat because Natasha is sleeping there and I don't want to wake her up. And in the morning, I woke up and Anya said, let me take you to the bus. She took me like 1 block to the bus. I wait there, a sherut comes, and I'm like worried in my head because I don't have my tefillin with me, because I wasn't expecting to stay over, and I didn't know if I would get back in time to daven before the time is up in the morning when you're supposed to daven. And I get on the sherut like all fretting and still sweating, mostly because I was still hot from the night before. And another miracle happened. There was a soldier there, and only one soldier, and he had a talit and tefillin, and I borrowed them from him. I davened. The second I finished, the sherut filled up with 1 million other people. We get to Jerusalem, and I go back to my roommates, and they're like, where were you? Your phone was dead. We were worried. And I'm like, you'll never believe what happened.
Okay, that was great. Thank you. I think we'll just take a 5-minute break until we have the next reading from the book, and then my Aunt Layla, I'll introduce her, is going to be speaking next. So 5 minutes. Are we ready to continue? Just wait for everything to calm down. Okay. I don't know if any of you saw, if some of you might have seen on Facebook that I wrote that one of my dreams was to have an event at Tmol Shilshom while it's raining outside. Right. And I'm not joking. Okay, I wrote there that it was my only dream, so I admit that I do have other dreams. But it really, I always think that Tmol Shilshom is such a cozy place, and to be sitting here and hearing stories while it's raining outside is very cozy. I didn't think that it would be raining so much that you actually get soaked just running to the bathroom. So I guess you have to be like really specific about what you wish for. Okay, so the next reader from the book and the speaker are my uncle and aunt, Meir and Layla Tenenbaum, who are visiting here from Toronto. Their daughter is learning here for the year. And I just keep thinking how amazing it is for them to be here. I know that, you know, their daughter's here, but even that's amazing in itself because it's not simple times at all. And I really appreciate that you're here. And I admit that I actually made sure to plan the event so that they could see what I do. So that's why specifically on this day exactly so that it works for them. And so I'm really, really happy for you to be here. And I also just want to say that my aunt, part of what she's going to be reading about, she's going to be mentioning her mother, my grandmother, who read here the first event that I had here. Was there anyone here that was here for for my event called Love and Lack Thereof? Yes. Yeah. So you remember my grandmother? So she was just sick. She's still a little bit sick, and she had to go to the hospital, and we were like worried to death about her and crying and worrying about her. So thank God she's pulling through. Thank God, because she means so much to us. And so she's going to get a mention in my aunt's story. So, Uncle Meir. So basically doing this.
Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't.
Oh, maybe, you know what, just like for the context, it's like been so long.
Is it fun?
I don't know, like the 2 last time, whatever? Yeah, we last one.
Wherever you fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch, and your gang will fly on. You'll be left in a lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, And the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done. Gotta see the pictures.
Oh yeah, I forgot to hold the pictures. You want to hold it up? I'm sorry, I forgot that you guys have to see the pictures. All right. Don't worry about it. Everybody does. Right. It's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, this doesn't work anymore. Okay. So let's just wait a second to see
The Jenny is working. The Jenny is working. Yeah, the Jenny. Generator.
Something exploded. Yeah, so something's. Just wait. I'm going to see if he's gonna. It's not about you.
Okay. Just putting pen to paper is a journey in itself. Choosing which journey was one that I can share, am willing to share, and would be understood by others was a long process. I spoke to my family, and the overall consensus was to speak about my trip to Israel from Toronto to bury my father 25 years ago. Sounds like a strange choice. Sounds depressing, morose, and just not very interesting. I believe the opposite is true. Just to give you a little background, my father, Rabbi Shraga Feivel Rosenzweig, was 61 years old when he suddenly passed away. We were forced to quickly plan our trip to Israel. My father, who always dreamed of living in Israel and never attained that dream, planned at least to spend his eternity buried in Israel. I was 30 years old when my father passed away. I had 5 children at the time and was married just less than 10 years. I had never been to Israel. I did have a passport, hoping that one day I would travel overseas. My father died late on a Friday afternoon, and our journey to the Holy Land to bury him began on Sunday morning. My dear father was the person that we all turned to for guidance, reassurance, halachic questions, and just a really good laugh when we most needed it. He was no longer there with us, gone in the blink of an eye. It was very sad and tragic for those closest to my father. That Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, the day after my father's death, and the night before we were to embark on our trip to the Holy Land to bury him, was truly a difficult time for us all. The reality of our loss was slowly sinking in. As my husband Meir, my sister Etty, and her husband Jack sat on our house phone extensions, discussing the trip, the Shiva, our poor widowed mother, a very important topic came up. As I said earlier, our father was our halachic advisor. Well, he was gone now. What to do? Thank God he was still with us in our hearts, heads, and humor. As we sat discussing the laws of Shiva, which thankfully none of us had experienced until this point, I asked the question, can one change their underwear during the Shiva? My husband, without missing a beat, said yes, but only with each other. Well, that was a well-deserved moment of belly-aching laughter that we all needed desperately. We knew from there that somehow we would get through this new journey. The people who attempted the trip were my mother, my brother Avram, my sister Etty, and brother-in-law Jack, who are here, Deena's parents, my mother's best friend Diamond, and my husband and myself. Just a note of how the human spirit has an amazing ability to not only survive, but also to live when you think that it least wants to. We were driving to the Toronto airport in a limousine that Sunday morning. My mother was still in a state of shock over the sudden loss of her beloved husband. She had commented over and over again that she didn't know how she would go on without her beloved Feivel. We didn't know either. But then, as we were driving on the highway, we were suddenly sideswiped by another car, and our driver swerved to avoid a terrible accident. My mother screamed and said, "Be careful, we could have been killed." Right then and there I knew that beyond all reason, our dear mother wanted to not only survive, but to live for all of us. We flew out of Toronto with a connecting flight set for us in New York City. Well, that's what the travel agent had told us. However, when we got to JFK in New York, they seemed to have no idea that we were all booked to continue the next leg of our journey to Israel. The time of the year made it an exceptionally busy flight. It was the end of the month of Tishrei, and all of the families and yeshiva boys were heading back en masse to Eretz Yisrael. If you have ever heard of a balagan, Total havoc. That is LL at JFK, New York City. Doesn't really matter what time of the year. I've traveled out of JFK one other time. Same story. I'm going to sound like a bit of a racist right now, but try never to travel with hundreds of Brooklyn Jews together with Israelis and just a couple of us token out-of-towners thrown in for good measure. It's really not pretty. Yelling, screaming, crying, deafening, threatening, ignoring. And that was just the LL ticket agents. We were trying to get 7 people to Israel to bury my father. They didn't have our reservation, and they didn't seem to really care if we got there or not. My brother Avram just relayed to me a story that I didn't even remember. He said that when he was trying to reason with one of the LL personnel, and he said we were trying to get there to bury our dear father, she replied, "Let someone else bury him." I should mention, they were willing to still take my father's body, but we were the problem. My brother-in-law Jack proceeded to offer money to people who would give up their seats. He of course got a number of people who were willing. LL said no. In the end, we got 4 seats. Our dear mother and the immediate mourners were allowed to go. Our dear husbands, as well as my mother's closest friends, were refused entry to the plane. It was a difficult time for all of us. I'd just like to mention my husband wrote an amazing letter to LL after this terrible incident. They did send a letter of apology, and they also planted a tree for Mr. Rosenwig. My father's name was Rabbi Rosenzweig. I've gotten a better response to a lost bag from Air Canada. Oh well, by the way, we still fly LL. I'm over great service. I really like anti-missile devices on my airplanes. It bears mentioning that there's nothing more surrealistic than being on a 10-hour flight to a loved one's funeral. Nobody knows what you're doing there. You're in your own bubble. Most people on the plane are excitedly traveling to the Holy Land, maybe for the first time, maybe the 10th time. Don't forget this was my first trip to Israel as well. I had such a strange feeling inside of me. I was broken-hearted and scared about burying my father, but I was also strangely excited to be going to Israel for the first time. I was only 30, which is probably an average age here in this room tonight. My first trip to Israel. Wow. But maybe this was a way that God wanted me to initiate my Israeli journey. The trip was long and difficult, as all of these flights are. The flight attendant was so rude to my mother more than once. At last, being that I had nothing to lose, I told her off. I told her my mother had just lost her husband suddenly. I told her we were going to bury him, and she got very defensive and said she was having a very hard day. She didn't know about my mother. She didn't know what she was going through, and I told her that's the point. You never know who you are talking to or what they are going through. Treat everyone the same. Be nice. From that point on, she was so sweet, we all developed toothaches by the end of the flight. We landed in Israel and were greeted by cousins and my in-laws who were vacationing there. We drove to the cemetery in Beit Shemesh immediately for the burial. It was an intimate crowd of some family and some friends from Toronto. My father, who was a very known rabbi in Toronto and in the area, would have had a huge funeral if he had been buried in Toronto. However, this felt right for us. I won't go into the burial, though that is part of my journey. But that is too private to speak about now. Suffice it to say that after that experience, I knew I was no longer the same person. Burying your loved one is like burying a part of yourself. But don't worry. The rest of you that is left gets stronger, and if you are lucky and work hard, even better. Our dear cousins hosted us for our one-day shiva in their homes in Mala Dumim. We will never forget their amazing hospitality and love. We had to leave the next day for the airport at 5 in the morning. I was so sad we drove in the dark to the airport. Remember, this was still my first trip to Israel. I desperately wanted to see the land of Israel one more time before I left. I swore to myself that this was the first of many times I would go to Israel. I hoped it would be on good occasions. Thankfully, that has come true for me. On the return trip, I would like to mention we brought back with us another mourner, our uncle, my father's younger brother from Israel. He had just lost his own wife 2 months before, and he was not in good shape. We got to the airport. We were told our KLM flight was leaving on time. We had a connecting flight in Amsterdam and would be back in Toronto that same night. We got on the flight thinking, okay, the hardest part is behind us. Let's get home to our loved ones, finish the Shiva, then we can start our life without Dad in it and see how we do. We took off, said Tfilat HaDerech, and started to count down the time until we were home. My sister Etty, who was an experienced flyer, to and from Israel looked out the window and said she didn't remember seeing the coast on this side of the plane before. My mother, meanwhile, is saying she feels a draft on her feet coming from the back. She keeps asking, is it possible there's a door open? We, of course, look at her like she's losing it because of her grief. All of a sudden, the pilot comes over the speaker and says, sorry folks, we have a back door slightly ajar and we have to go back to the terminal. Is that even possible? Don't tell Mom, she's right as usual. Back we go. We are left waiting and waiting. How long does it take to close a door? But it took a long time. We had a connecting flight to make. What does this mean? Are we going to make the connecting flight? Of course they tell us, no problem, lots of time. So this was also 1989. No cell phones, no texting, no email. Couldn't get in touch with anyone to get us on another flight. There was a lot of good things that happened in prehistoric times. This wasn't one of them. At last we took off knowing that it would take a miracle to get us to Amsterdam in time to connect to Toronto. But you never know. We were worried about our mother and now our very sad uncle. There was nothing to do, nowhere to go, nobody to speak to. Might as well relax and enjoy each other, and somehow we did. I should mention we were on a non-Jewish airline in the midst of Shiva. Some of the basic rules of Shiva are the same as if you're at home. No mirrors. I had no makeup. My shetzel wig might have been on sideways for all I knew. I had no non-leather shoes of my own, so was wearing my mother's vinyl pink slip-on slippers. Not attractive. Plus, we all had our shirts torn because of the ritual of ripping your garment due to mourning. People asked us if we had been in a fight. But the best part of all, I was about to get off the plane to run and try to get us on a connecting flight out. And I was about to run through Schiphol Airport, one of the most beautiful airports in the world, looking like something the cat dragged in. And my mother looked at me and said, Layla, you have a run in your stockings. Do you have another pair? I looked at her, burst out laughing, and replied, trust me, Mom. Nobody's going to notice the run. Well, I ran like crazy to the transfer desk, got there before everyone else. No flights out that day. First flight out tomorrow morning. I had to break it to everyone. We were going to be put up in a Hilton hotel. We sat there realizing this was it. We had two choices, laugh or cry. We chose to laugh. We looked at each other. We were a sorry-looking bunch. And we all burst out laughing. We decided right there and then that Dad was right there with us. He wanted to show us that even with trials and tribulations, when life doesn't go just the way you want it to, you can choose to rise above and smile or even laugh when your first inclination is to cry. Hold on. There we go. We decided right there and then that Dad was right there with us. He wanted to show us that even with trials and tribulations, when life doesn't go just the way you want it to, you can choose to rise above and smile or even laugh when your first inclination is to cry. True, we had each other. We weren't alone. But that was part of our journey to appreciate. We have an amazing family, great friends. We were not alone. Dad didn't leave us by ourselves. We could rely on each other and we could laugh. We went to the beautiful hotel. We were each given our own room. They served dinner around the pool. Of course, we were put with our Palestinian cousins who insisted on kosher food. My Uncle Davy almost came to blows with a few of them while having a heated political discussion. Thank God we all came out alive. I was being followed by a sheik who said that I looked like his third wife. He offered to buy me from my husband for 3 goats and a camel. Not a bad deal at the time. With inflation, I guess it's more like a car and a flat screen TV. We called home to tell our very sad mourning family in Toronto what was going on, and we couldn't stop laughing. You know when the laughs start and you can't stop? Well, that was us. They were having a terrible time at home, and we sounded like we were fine. Were we fine? No. But we were in limbo. We were sitting on the floor in our hotel. We were not listening to music, not watching TV. We were breaking bread with our adversaries, who definitely have a different point of view than us, and we were laughing. Some would consider us irreverent, and they might be right. But we not only survived the trip to and from Israel, we lived through the trip, and we continued to live. There were more mishaps, more delays, more getting off and on planes, more glitches that made our trip exhausting, annoying, frustrating, and ridiculously funny. We came off of our plane in Toronto a day later than expected into the arms of our waiting spouses. We went back to the regular Shiva House experience. Everyone felt terrible for us. But we didn't, because we knew what Dad knew. That if we could survive this trip where everything went wrong, that could go wrong, and laugh and pull together, that we would continue to do that in the days, months, and years that lay ahead. Why did I choose this story to speak about tonight? Because I'm in Israel. I'm with all of you. For the most part, people have chosen to live right here in Jerusalem. You are a blessed people. You have challenges around you every day that most of us can never imagine. But not only do you survive, you choose to live. I wish you all love, laughter, and peace in all of your future journeys. Thank you for listening to me, and a special thank you to my sweet niece Deena, who arranged this beautiful evening. I have been a witness to her life's journey from day one. I look forward to following the rest of yours, Deena.
Thank you. Thank you, Layla. Do you want to read? Yeah. Okay. Could everyone hear? Yeah. Could everyone hear okay? Okay, great. All right, so Hava is going to read next, and then Tikva will tell her story. Oh, yeah. Hi everybody, I'm Ahava. I also want to give a shout out to Deena, whose dream it has been for a long time to make these things, so it's really a pleasure to see it happen. And to David, who's always an amazing host, and such a beautiful institution that feels like home always. And I do, by the way, want to give I've had the pleasure of knowing Deena for 13, 14 years, so I also want to give a shout out to her amazing father, whose theme in life is never go anywhere. Don't think that it's not like seriously. That's his theme in life. So I think it's amazing that's like, oh, the places we go, because he doesn't go anywhere. So that's like a shout out to what you were saying, right? Thank you. That was great. Yeah. Yeah. You will come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you could sprain both your elbow and shin. Do you dare stay out? Do you dare go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? And if you go in, should you turn left or right? Or right and 3/4? Or maybe not quite. Or go round back and sneak in from behind. Simple it's not, I'm afraid you will find. For a mind maker upper to make up his mind. That's it.
Awesome.
Thanks. It's all just for sweet. No.
I appreciate the visual expression.
So Deena asked me, she gave me the option of speaking about different things. I wasn't sure whether to speak about the time I spent in a nunnery in Hungary, or the time I accidentally wandered into a brothel in China, or the time I was banned from Russia. So I'm Tikva, and I'm going to talk about the time I was banned from Russia. So there you go. The other stories are still true and existent. Next time. So it was a fresh Tuesday in early March 2005, and I landed in Latvia. I shouldered a backpack and I was walking through the centre of Riga. I shrugged off the -10 Celsius temperature, what's that for a British person, and contemplated walking across the frozen river. All these people walking across the ice. What's that, adventure? I'll do it. Like some demented Frankenstein in search of the monster of adventure, I just walked across. I looked down twice and I saw the water underneath, but I got to the other side. However, that doesn't count because in Riga, everybody from the norm of the age of 8 is wearing stiletto heels, and I was wearing these kind of shoes. So that preluded my first and last trip to Russia, that spot there in Riga. I promised the lovely people who'd given me this travel grant to go that I was doing everything on a shoestring. And I was true to my word. The overnight train from Riga to Moscow took 16 hours, but it was like the Orient Express, just for the price of a ticket from Jerusalem to Haifa, that's all. We journeyed through this primeval wasteland of stark black and white, which was softened only by greys. I'm never going to forget what I saw. It was still, and you saw these people from time to time scurrying next to the tracks. It really felt like the place had been devastated and abandoned by nature, but we were travelling through it. When I got to Moscow, my hosts were a middle-aged woman called Tatiana and her student-aged daughter called Sasha, and they were fine. For a high premium, I gained the privilege of sleeping on their living room floor on sofa cushions, and in between the heating breaking down during one particularly cold -30 degrees Celsius night, and by the way, I was too British to complain, I just in the morning couldn't feel my limbs for a bit. I got invited to their dacha, and I had the extended family barely hide their fear of being contaminated by a Jew once they realised I was Jewish. I had a great time with them, apart from that. Oh, and their delight at persistently mishearing my name, Tikva meaning hope, for tikva meaning pumpkin in Russian. So there were barreled laughs, so it was great. So the way it works in Russia, or at least how it was then, is that you have to go to the police station within 3 days of arriving to be registered and accounted for by a local. So off we trooped, my hostess and I, the day after I arrived, only to be met by the best in Russian bureaucracy. The police station was shut. So, well, almost the best, as you'll see later. The next day, we went again, and it was shut. So clearly Moscow was a very law-abiding citizen, or real peacekeepers weren't the ones wearing the uniform. So my hostess wasn't having any of this. She said, "Look, Tikva," in her accent, "you don't need to be here to do all of this. I'll do it for you. Go on." So that was that. Off I went to enjoy Moscow. And I had an amazing time in Moscow. Other than not finding any kosher food to eat, which meant I was really hungry. But it was a really amazing city. I worked for Cambridge University Press while I was there, and I had this personal driver for the first and last time in my life who transported me to these tiny hamlets outside the city where I adjudicated on English language competitions and felt like a real fraud. And they offered me ham and cheese sandwiches every single time I went, and I had to say thank you so much, but no thank you. I'm Jewish, and they would say, what? And and me and the driver got on really well. It was really nice. So when I left for the second leg of my trip in St. Petersburg, which was meant to be the vacation part, my hostess returned my papers to me from the police station, filled out, and I happily hopped onto another overnight train. This one was only 8 hours, so it was fine. And I made friends with a number of motherly Russians who were really troubled that this small English woman was travelling alone, and how could they look after her, and how could they be my babushka, and it was lovely, it was really nice. And the best conversations I had in Russia were on public transport. I spent a lovely few weeks in St. Petersburg, much more European. I spent my time looking at the heights of the high heels there, and the different coloured fur coats. And also listening to eulogies for the city's Pope, because the Pope had just passed away. And I found my love for Chagall, and I was talked to any Russian that I could while I was there. And on the 18th of April, after 35 days in Mother Russia, I boarded the St. Petersburg-Riga train for a 15-hour ride back to get my cheapo flight back home. And once again, I had great company. And the train officials decided for some reason that it was not possibly, I don't know why, not so appropriate for me to be in the plebeian carriage with a lot of slightly drunken young Russian lads drinking vodka. And so they moved me to another carriage, which was like the suite, with this lovely woman called Ludmilla. And she was really nice. She told me her whole life story, complete with messy divorce, difficult life, commuting between Russia and Latvia every month in order to earn enough money to support her young children back home, whom she only saw once or twice a year. So we chatted, and I listened, and we became friends, and I really felt for her life, and we bonded. Until about 1 o'clock in the morning, when the train lurched to a stop on the Russian-Latvian border, and on came the border officials to check my paperwork. Tikva Blaukov. And why are you here? And why is your visa not stamped? So who are you? Why is your name Tikva? Okay, fine. I wasn't going to argue with them at that point. And it turns out my charming hostess from Moscow had done something kind of dodgy. And the official stamp that I'd got on my visa papers wasn't the bona fide one that I thought it was. And the onslaught interrogation began. How much do you earn? Where do you earn it? Are you really a student? We don't believe you're a student. How much do your parents earn? Are you married? Are you sure you're not married? I promise you. They asked me that. How much do you pay in taxes? What are you doing in Russia? And how many times have you come? Do you have any pets? Why don't you have any pets? So between discussions about like Mandelstam and Russian poetry and feminism and eating stale alcoholic chocolates, which my octogenarian Russian teacher thought was really funny to feed her students, I had been taught Russian and I could hold my ground. But 45 minutes later, and I'd had most of the train peek their heads through the door to see who this pesky foreigner was. Angliskaya devachka, the English girl, like, don't bother her. And then at that point, the burly female guard said to me, you have to come with me now. And I'm thinking, me, with you, at 2 o'clock in the morning? No. On the Russian-Latvian border? No, thank you. And she said, okay, well, guess you didn't buy that one. So you have to pay a fine. And you could see her thinking, 2,000 rubles. Sounds a lot. The truth is, it is a lot. I had 2,000 rubles with me. It's the equivalent of around 150 shekels. So I had it with me. I'd be unscrupulous. I'd done my shoestring budget. But that was about the weekly salary for my newly acquired friend Ludmila. And that was going to be a bit gauche if I somehow ruined that friendship straight away. And also, I wasn't stupid. I knew that that wasn't the fine, and she was just going to put it in her pocket, and I didn't really need to pay. So I said, really? 2,000 rubles? Is there an option that I could pay later? And she said, well, no, not really. And I said, look. And by that point, the train drivers, the passengers, and probably the train station themselves had probably phoned up and said, look, you need to get moving. It's 45 minutes later. So thank God for some good negotiation skills. And she put down on a piece of paper the details of where I needed to pay. It said, within 30 days, pay. So when I got to Latvia, I celebrated the fall of the Soviet Union and the fact that I couldn't be incarcerated or extradited from Latvia and put in this terrible Russian jail. And I celebrated by buying myself some dried fish because I was really starving. That was the only thing I could find. And I sat by the river and ate the fish next to the melting snow. When I got back to England, I really, really tried to pay this fine. I was a bit busy with other things, so maybe the days passed a little bit more quickly than they should have done. But I tried to pay, and I probably spoke to every single Russian official that exists. And they all said to me, sure, no problem. Pay us and pay the other person who we're going to put you through to in a second. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'll pay the other person, not you. And so I really tried, and in the end, I couldn't pay it. It was 30 days later. And I got a letter in the post, flimsy letter, written in the beautiful Cyrillic handwriting that they probably learned by the age of 3, that all looks identical, that every single Russian speaker is able somehow to do that, except for me, I can't do it. And it said on the envelope itself in English, Tikva Blaukov. And I opened the letter, and inside it said, Dear Miss Tikva Blaukov, you are not allowed within Russia's borders for the next 5 years. If you do, you'll be guilty of a felony and accordingly punished at a court of law. And in my home in England, I have this letter pinned on the wall. And I thought, wait, I was trying to pay, and I actually really didn't do anything. And since then, I've never been back to Russia. I've been near Russia. I went to Belarus, and I was a little bit worried that they'd look in my passport and see what happens. But by the age of 20, I'd been banned from the largest country in the world, which wasn't bad going. And the dried fish snack, which I could never finish because it was disgusting, is still in my pantry to warn off visitors. So there you go.
All right, who would like to read from the book next? You can read after that, because you want to read from, yeah. Who would like to read? I know that some of you don't know how to read, and I understand, but there's others who do know how to read, so you can read. Do you want to read? There we go. Oh, very good. Please.
No, let Rob.
Do you want to read, Mom? I guess it's fitting for my mother to read right before I come up to tell my story. Do you want to read from there? Yeah. Okay, so you just read this and this till here. Okay. No?
You can get so confused that you'll start into race down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed, I fear, toward a most useless place, the waiting place. For people just waiting. Waiting for a train to go or a bus to come or a plane to go or the mail to come or the rain to go or the phone to ring or the snow to snow, or waiting around for a yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night, or waiting, perhaps, for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a better break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another chance. Everyone is just waiting.
Okay. All right. I changed the name of my piece. It's called Dear Family, Nothing to Report. Dear Fam, at 3 a.m. Friday morning, I finished getting ready to leave. 3:45 a.m., Devorah and I, my sister, were outside waiting for the Sheirut. For no clear reason, I've been in hysterics much of the time since those first moments standing on the street in the middle of the night. Half of what Devorah says has me laughing like crazy, trying to muffle it in the Sheirut or while standing in line at the airport. Devorah just pretends it's not happening, which seems to be working out well so far. It felt like forever until we got to our destination today. For example, after we'd already spent hours traveling and duty-free shopping, it was 7 a.m., and we were sitting at Burger Ranch in the airport eating French fries for breakfast, when Devorah looked at me and said, "Do you realize we haven't even gone anywhere yet?" Clearly, I was again on the floor in hysterics. But honestly, I've had so much fun that the trip has been worthwhile already. We were supposed to be on an Arkia flight at 5 a.m., which was changed to a flight at 8 a.m. of an unknown airline. We were informed of this via email a couple of days before our trip. This flight was annoyingly delayed without really ever saying anything to us passengers. As we sprawled out on the comfy carpeted floors of the airport, we kept referencing planes, trains, and automobiles. Our flight turned out to be on a very small Hungarian airline which did not encourage faith from its passengers. We were mainly Israeli Jews and Arabs on the flight, and a majority clapped wholeheartedly upon landing. Not because of some newfound Hungarian patriotism, but simply because people were grateful to be in one piece. I personally didn't think they were so bad, but Devorah found some of the strange noises and bumps to make her a little nervous. Go understand some people. In the Budapest airport, we stood with many Israelis waiting for our bags, and then, after noticing embarrassingly that ours were way bigger than everyone else's, we quickly grabbed them and went towards the meeting area where we were supposed to find a person holding an Arkia sign. Turns out it was us and around 50-100 other Israelis with the same instructions. We got on a bus full of people I thought I recognized from somewhere, and about half an hour or so later, we finally arrived at our hotel. Thank God. It was around 12:30 p.m., 1:30 p.m. Israel time, which meant we traveled door to door for around 9.5 hours. And here I thought Europe's closed. I wanted to make sure we got our places at the Chabad meals on Shabbat, and so we unpacked a bit and organized ourselves and set out for our first walk in the city. I was the navigator, but seeing as it was my first time in Budapest, I immediately took us in the wrong direction.
having a suspicious feeling about whether we were getting closer or further from the Chabad house, I asked people for help, who turned us around, pointing us in the opposite direction. When we got to the Chabad house, we recognized it immediately by the dude standing outside with tzitzis swaying, a kippah on his head, and a rough and tough, hands-folded stance. Apparently, this was the first line of security. We had to state our business, pay for Shabbat meals, and he let us in. The second guard had me take off my bag so he could look through it, handle it every way he could, and ask me in Hebrew that he obviously didn't know, Ma Shimcha. I barely cracked a smile at the grammar and told her, pay back, my name. Finally, we were in the Chabad house. Home sweet home. You know, I really think that it should be Chabad with the motto, to feel at home. And what's it called? What's it in the El Nalgish Bavayit Ba'olam, something like that? Achi Bavayit Ba'olam. That Chabad is the one that should have that motto. Okay, fine, El too. We paid for our meals, and I spoke to Moish, who is a Hungarian-Israeli Jew, about how we might celebrate Devorah's birthday over Shabbat. We opted to have a little party tonight at dinner with 170 of our closest friends. While out, we also exchanged money. Don't ask. The exchange rate here is so confusing that we have no idea how much we're spending. Devorah suggested we play store in our room to get used to the local currency. But meanwhile, whenever we pay for something, we are putty in the locals' hands. Now we're back at the hotel. Devorah is sleeping and I'm writing you. I might go for a little walk to see the Danube. As you can see, we haven't actually done anything yet, but it doesn't feel that way. It's been a seriously hilarious adventure, and I can only imagine what might happen when we actually do start to do things. Stay safe, and we'll do our best to do the same. Love, Deena.
No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape all that waiting and staying. You'll find the right places where boom bands are playing. With banner flapping, once more you'll ride high, ready for anything under the sky. Ready because you're that kind of guy. Well, the places you'll go, there's fun to be done, there are points to be scored, there are games to be won. The magical things you can do with the ball will make you the winningest winner of all. Fame, you'll be famous as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV.
Where do you want to stand?
I don't know. I can
want to stand here where I was standing?
I mean, the happy spot, right?
That's good.
I feel like, I don't know, I'm like the president right now. Ah! Okay. Woo! Okay. Oh, everyone's looking at me. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, that's what usually happens when you're standing and everyone else is sitting.
Gotta get a good look. My name's Shiley. I'm from Chicago. And I am going to share my story called My Romance in Paradise. And yeah, so it's like this. Last year, from May to August, I was student teaching in Australia, in Melbourne. Yeah, woo! Love it. Great place, amazing. I loved it. Melbourne's a great crew. I was teaching. I didn't have that many friends, but you know, I had fun with my students and it was good. But I knew I needed to get out. We had a school holiday, and I had to go somewhere. So I was like, you know, what am I going to do? I can't get to like everywhere in these little 2 weeks. I was like, why don't I just do the east coast of Australia, which is absolutely beautiful. Highly recommend it. So I booked the nervous traveler who doesn't travel anywhere alone, who asked all these people at the Chabad house, like if a girl can go travel by herself in Australia. I was like, oh my God, am I going to do this? Like, I was like freaking out. I booked a one-way ticket to Cairns, which is where you go to see the Great Barrier Reef, all by myself, with no idea where I was going to stay till the night before. This random Airbnb that I found, I was like, oh, terrified. So I did it, booked my one-way flight, had no idea how I was going to make it back home. I get there, schlepping my bags around, trying to find my Airbnb host who's going to take me home, and all this crazy stuff. Finally get to her house. She's like, it's only 15 minutes away from the town where all the young people hang out. She's like, if you want to take a bus, it's like an hour. So I was already kind of way out there, somewhere, a city I didn't know.
I met these other people that were staying there, and they were like, you should go on Gumtree and find other travelers to hang out with. And this was a girl who didn't have any friends at this point in Australia. So I go on this Gumtree, which is like Craigslist, but like not sketchy at all. No joke, like it's totally legit. I love it. And I found this post that said, American 23 looking to travel to Brisbane. And I was like, okay, we'll go check this out. I didn't know if it was a guy, I didn't know it was a girl, didn't know who it was. I just knew they were American and they were my age, and I was like, let's see what happens. Pick up the phone, turns out it's a guy. And all I have is a few text messages to go off of. And me, the girl that doesn't meeting people online, you already like get rid of 95% of the guys on like OkCupid because they just suck. And I'm like, how am I gonna meet a stranger who I don't know anything about and like meet him? So I'm like, duh. So the next morning, I have a ride from my host at 5 in the morning because that's when it was available for her to go do Tai Chi in the city. And I knew I was gonna meet this guy later that day, did some Tai Chi. And soon, by 8 o'clock, after asking a bunch of people who this was, David comes in and I said, huh? And we walked around, had fun, talked, schmoozed. Realized this could be a big goy-yoy, as I put it, because he wasn't Jewish, and I was like, well, I wasn't going to date you anyway, but like, it doesn't matter, whatever, we'll have fun, we'll talk, this is totally platonic, whatever. So he was really cool, he knew all these people, and he went and took me and introduced me to his friends, it was great, we had fun, and I had to scramble because I was meeting with some guy from Couchsurfers, who's also called Rainbow Sarong, who was a nudist that night, and I needed to make sure I get there on time. Crazy stuff happened. So I'm scrambling back to my apartment where I'm staying, totally realized I had just enough time to catch the next bus back to the city, scrambling, had no idea what I was going to do. I was already like, I don't know if you can tell, but I worry. So I was like I'm not going to make it, something's going to happen, this is going to be bad. So I make it, I run there, and I'm like running late to the bus. I almost forget my pomegranate, my beloved pomegranate in this person's house, because I was going to leave, because I was too far from everything. And damsel in distress calls David. David comes to my rescue after getting lost for like 45 minutes, comes and saves me. And I was like, oh, wonderful. Takes me to meet this guy. I leave all my junk in his car. This guy who I met that morning from some internet website, I left all my stuff in his car, and I met the nudist at this local pub. It was awesome, great times. We hung out later that night, went to a bar, I tried to be a wing girl, it was weird, but whatever. I had nowhere to stay because I had left my host and I had all my stuff in his car, didn't know what I was going to do. Found a random hostel, stayed there, grabbed a few things from his car, which he was living out of at the time, and went to the hotel with a few things in my hand, still trusting him with all my stuff. Next morning I wake up, we were supposed to go, a bunch of us travelers, to see Cape Tribulation and all these places up north, absolutely beautiful. And he ditched all these other people to go do it with just me, by ourselves. And I was like, oh, this is so cute. Awesome. Whatever. It was like, it turned into this little magical honeymoon of sorts for a guy who I'd literally known for a day. I was like, whoa. So we started driving around. We played some random basketball in the middle of nowhere town in Australia. We don't know where. We went to these beautiful waterfalls. And the funny thing is, I wanted him to come in, and he would not get in the water. And I was like, why aren't you getting in the water? I knew something was up. And he was like, it's too cold. And I was like, okay, I don't believe you. Like, no way. Turns out this guy had a fear of swimming and all sorts of stuff. And I was okay in the water, no problem. And me, there was a bunch of these rocks that you had to climb over to like get to the fun part. And I was terrified of that. So the whole time we're working together while the parts we had to get in the water, I made sure he wasn't going to drown, and the parts on the rocks, I was like, oh my god, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. So he was like, it's going to be okay. Trust me. And I'm like, okay, why not? I've already trusted you enough at this point. Like, it's going to be okay. And we worked together as a team, and I was like, this is kind of beautiful. Like, you know, I kind of feel like I'm in a relationship, and people at this hostel also thought we'd been dating for years, and I was like, this is so beautiful. Like, it's like, how handsome. Like, he's taking care of me. Oh, it's like wonderful. At that point, I was like, I want to kiss this guy, but no, too many hormones, not going to happen, not going to happen. I was like, oh my god, but he was so cute. And muscular, oh, he's good looking. So, you know, yeah, I felt really good. So a few things happened. We ended up getting back to the hostel, which he knew everybody at. Everybody knew his name. He was like Mr. Popular over there. And me, I was the girl that he was hanging out with all day, who had made him dinner that night. Apparently that wasn't good enough. The Israeli ended up making him dinner. Some random Israeli at the hostel. I was like, here, have a burger. And I was like, great. My little sandwich was just crap. But whatever. Still felt good. I'd never done that for a guy before. I was like, oh, right on. Right on. We hung out with people. We drank our goon. You guys know the goon, right? Box wine. We got... we had a lot of box wine, and I had to wake up the next morning and go see the reef. And I wanted to hang out with him then. I was like, I have to go to bed. I was like, come say goodnight to me later before you leave. Immediately after he comes to say goodbye to me, I was hoping to see him the next few days. And I was so nervous because I didn't want to kiss him, whatever. And I was like, I'm just going to be good and not do anything. And he gives me this look, like, he didn't have to say the words. It was like, I'm going to kiss you right now. It just looked at me and I was like, okay. Like, he gave me the kiss of my life that I would never forget. It was unbelievable. And I was like, this is crazy. We held hands for the next 2 hours. It was very cute. And I was hoping to see him the next 2 days. But it was wonderful, regardless of what happened. Like, there was a beauty of kind of being somewhere totally far from home and meeting somebody that made me feel so comfortable and relaxed and kind of gave me a taste of what a relationship could be like. And it was beautiful. And I don't know, I felt a little bit at home, chibabite, like something like that. And if you want to know the rest, then I want to know the last little bit, what happened.
Yeah.
Yes. So I knew it was a goy the whole time, but that wasn't going to make any, it wasn't going to help me at that point. So his family lives in Chicago, and I'm from Chicago. For 6 months, I was wondering what was going to happen, and I'm like, I have to get out of this, I have to get out. Finally, I saw him again 6 months later in Chicago this past January, and I was like, saw him, we hung out, and I was like, okay, I think this is going to be the end of our story. Thank you so much. The memories will always be intact, and it will always be a part of my Australia experience. So, you can always feel at home, even though when you're a million miles away. Thanks for listening.
Okay, who would like to read? Wow, I thought this would be the easy part. Jeez.
Sorry. I haven't read in a long time. Fame. You'll be famous as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV. Turn. Do you guys want to see pictures?
You don't have to do that.
Yeah, I'm showing pictures too. Except when they don't, because sometimes they won't. I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play lonely games too. Games you can't win because you'll play against you. All alone, whether you like it or not, alone will be something you'll be quite a lot. And when you're alone, there's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some down the road between hither and yon that can scare you so much you won't want to go on. This is depressing. Here's the picture. But, and it gets scarier, but on you will go, though the weather be foul. On you will go, though your enemies prowl. On you will go, though the heckin' cracks howl. Onward up many a frightening creek, though your arms may get sore and your sneakers may leak.
I should have had you read the whole book.
It's doing other stuff. On and I don't remember how far. On and on you will hike, and I know you'll hike far and face up to your problems, whatever they are. Like more? I don't remember. Should I just keep going?
No, just till the end of that.
Yes. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, till the end.
That was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a piece called Overcoming Exile, which I wrote some years ago, many years ago anyway, and it's subtitled Journey to Jewish Scandinavia. My assignment was simple enough: to take my guitar and a few words from Jerusalem and to seek out the young Jews of Denmark, Finland and Sweden. I was given plane tickets, a list of addresses and a title, Scholar in Residence. In Copenhagen I was met by the Shaliach, my Jewish agency liaison man, a warm fellow from Tel Aviv. The trains are on time, he informed me, as though looking for the one good point of the place. You think this is Galut? He warned. Wait till we leave Copenhagen. The Shaliach accompanied me to Aarhus on the mainland. The journey by car and boat and another car took half a day to complete. Aarhus people are to Copenhageners what Polacks are to Americans, joked my host. What wasn't so funny was that the Jews we were going to see were Polish. They had been kicked out of Poland after the 1968 food riots by a party of which they all had been ardent members. Only as they were being thrown out was it explained to them why. For some of the younger ones, under 30, it was the first time they knew they were Jewish. Neither the Gentile nor the Jewish communities of Copenhagen were too keen about accepting them, so they went to the remote, though fairly large city of Aarhus. The new arrivals stuck together in Aarhus like good comrades. They really don't know who or what they are, one of the organizers of my tour from the Danish Jewish community told me. Are they Poles, Danes, Jews? The older ones pretend that they're still in Poland, hurling the ultimate insult of provocateur at each other. Some of the younger generation had formed a Yiddish theatre group. To learn their parts, they travelled each week to Copenhagen for rehearsals. This fact was amazing as their performance, which seemed intent on raising the ghosts and spirits of their grandparents. After my own performance, one of the audience beckoned me over. My few songs and words had apparently stirred a few memories inside his bald, shining head. My brother was a Ger Chosid, he recalled for me. On Shabbos, thousands of Hasidim walked with the Rebbe in Warsaw, and later in Gur. Thousands. I can picture it clearly before me now. His clean-shaven face glowed without embarrassment. I myself, he added apologetically, take the services here. He nodded towards the centre of the community hall, where his compatriots were dancing to a Danish band. You get a minyan? I asked. We get, he assured me proudly. Small, but we get. He chewed over his words before elaborating. 6, 7, a small minyan. I would have left, but I could see he had something more to tell me. I was in Auschwitz, he said, matter-of-factly. I'm not religious, but my brother, you understand. I nodded. One day, he continued, a religious Jew was making the blessing over the small piece of bread that we received as our daily ration. In order to concentrate properly, he closed his eyes. As he did so, another prisoner, I think he may have been a capo, snatched the bread from him and ate it. Imagine. That's just what the Germans were waiting for. They seized the capo, and around his neck hung a sign, Ganov. They kept it on him a few days. How low we had fallen. We just sat there saying nothing, timeless, drawn to each other and alienated from one another as the exile is repelled from and drawn towards the redemption. Later, the Shaliach told me, he is their religious leader, and yet he is married to a non-Jewish woman. He has forgotten who he is. Helsingfors in Finnish, was the 5th call I made. It was dark and 10 below when I arrived. Snow fell from the cold heavens and got caught in my beard, only to fade into nothingness. I thought of my own city, of the sun and the warm faces, how easy it might have been here to lose one's soul. Beneath the snow, the streets were white as Sabbath tablecloths, and the street lights glistened like candles, but I heard no Jews singing. I met Joel S., a young research graduate who was also a member of the local board of management, inside the warm, impressive community centre to arrange my program. The stories he told me were already familiar. Intermarriage, a lack of homegrown talent to service the Jewish community, pessimism regarding the future, a slow drift towards Israel. I followed the local rabbi to the top story of the centre to meet the residents of the old folks' home. How old they all were, 80, 90, maybe more. Their memories could stretch back to the time of the Tsar of Russia. whose impositions on the Jews caused many of them to flee to Finland at the turn of the century. Their pride now was in telling me of their relatives in Israel, an aunt in Rehovot, a brother in Netanya, a grandchild in Jerusalem. Their eyes lit up as in broken Hebrew and Yiddish we related our separate stories. Even in their dotage, they did not feel abandoned. Like the other communities in Scandinavia, the Finnish one did not gain large numbers as a result of the Second World War. Jews leaving Eastern Europe used Finland at best as a stopover on the way south or west. This left too few Jewish youth to create lasting social groups. Maccabi Sports and later Bnei Akiva succeeded for short periods, declining as the membership grew older. Thus, on my evening in Helsinki, only a dozen or so of the audience were young. After half an hour, the middle-aged people drifted away from me to continue their more regular socializing and card playing. The younger people took me down to the coffee bar and insisted that I carry on singing and talking about Judaism, Hasidism, and Israel. One of them explained to me, the community has its own ways. Half an hour of something new is enough for them. Abu Turku is 2 or 3 hours up the road from Helsinki by train. I was due to stay there 2 nights. The president of the community met me at the station. He was a powerfully built man, yet possessed the most delicate manner. On the way over to his synagogue, he told me his story. My father came here from Slobodka. He was a meshulach, sent from the yeshiva to collect money. There weren't too many Jews here even then. Nevertheless, they urged my father to stay on as rabbi. I was born somewhere between here and Lithuania, on one of my parents' many trips back and forth, before deciding to stay here and after being made legitimate citizens. The president paused for a breath, as though the memory of his sainted parents had temporarily winded him. But it was not only the past that weighed on him. I have 2 sons. There is no life here for young Jews. Out of a community of 200 or 300 people, maybe 4 or 5 are my children's age. One of my sons went to Israel to study medicine, but it didn't work out. And after a year or so, he returned. Now he goes with a local girl, not Jewish, of course, and I expect they'll marry. He paused again and stood as if making a calculation for himself, but whatever thoughts he had remained private. That evening, I dined on food I had brought with me from my last kosher stop in Copenhagen. I had cold meat cuts, salad and beer, plus some hot tea provided by the caretaker's wife. It was still 10 below outside, so the drink was welcome. Shortly after eating, I was roused by the warden. Perhaps you'd care to join our minyan, he asked. Incredulously, I followed him. A minyan here, I asked. We always try to make a minyan for a kaddish, said the warden, unperturbed. I followed him into the study room, where the minyan had just commenced without us. I prayed too with great awe, as though I had stumbled on one of the secrets of the universe. The next day, the rabbi, it was one of his visiting days, took me round the synagogue. It was indeed splendid, as I had heard. Its rounded cupolas and combinations of styles harmonized in a delightful and surprising way. It was designed by a non-Jewish architect, explained the rabbi. Not without reason, he figured this was the only chance to build a synagogue, so he travelled around Europe investigating synagogues. Many visitors come to see it because it is so unique. It even has its own mikveh. Come, I'll show it to you. The warden called on me the next day to show me around the city. It was a picturesque, if cold place. I kept asking myself why it had fallen on me to come here at this time of the year. At the market square, people were buying for Christmas. Against a backdrop of snow and dark-edged buildings, the running figures seemed part of a Bruegel winter scene. Europe had not changed much. Only the Jews were gone. In Stockholm, in front of a crowd of 400 people, I discovered what keeps us apart from other people and also from one another. Asked to speak, I turned to that week's portion of the Torah. Why, I asked, is the second book called Exodus by the nations, but Shemot, names by the Jews? Because nations live for history, drama, grand design, empires, fame. But the Jews? He exists to be a Jew. In exile, each Jew is important. Every Reuven, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda is precious. That's why when we meet another Jew, even on the other side of the world, we recognize each other. And in that moment of recognition, we overcome exile. At one point, I was traveling across Sweden in a train. In contrast to the cold, dark woods outside, inside the train was hot and bright. Having removed all my outdoor clothes, I was sitting and reading Zevin's Tales of the Hasidim. At one of the small stations, the name of which I couldn't find later on any map, a couple pushed past me to the exit. But then they scrambled back through the holiday crowds and tapped me on the shoulder. I heard the words, Shalom Aleichem, in a pure, rounded Hebrew. But by the time I looked up, the couple had already gotten off the train. I strained my neck to catch a glimpse of them, but all I could see was two bodies hurrying into the dark. Who were these people? Where were they going? And why had I met them? I lowered my eyes, for I could not understand. In my open Tales of the Hasidim, I began to read a story, the one that starts, and there came a day when the holy Baal Shem Tov was lost in a dark forest.
Oh, wow. It's all been so wonderful. I'm like, I'm having such a good time. Okay, so we have one more storyteller. Does anybody want to read? Suddenly inspired to read from the book? No? Okay, you're all like avoiding.
Okay, I'll do it.
Oh, there you go.
I just have to. No, there's one more. There's two more.
Wait, because it's 1 and 1.
Yeah, you're good. Phew, I don't have to worry about this anymore. Yeah, see, it's not that hard.
Okay.
No pressure.
You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact. And remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left.
Thank you. All right, so now Laura Ben David is going to speak. She's going to say the whole thing, but she just came back a couple of weeks ago from going to India to help a group of Bnei Menashe come to Israel. And I'm friends with her, and I always see everything that's going on Facebook, and I was like, oh, I have to invite her to come speak about this. That's perfect. So, and she agreed to come.
Thank you. Actually, very, very happy to be here. It's very exciting. I've never been to one of these events, and it's really been phenomenal. Been incredible stories, and it's just been great. Hold on, I'm sharing with you guys.
Should I open up my thing also?
Yeah, I'm gonna post it on the. Yeah, I was supposed to bring a computer, but I messed up.
Or we're not sure who was.
A computer was supposed to be here, but it isn't. And I prepared for you guys a little presentation, which you will not have, but I do have.
My iPad?
Anybody's. What I did was I do have a nice slideshow that's not exactly what I'd planned, but it's very nice and it's relevant. And what I did was I posted the link to it on the event. I just did it this very second. So if you go there, you can open it up and look at it, or
and I'll
pass my my phone around.
So I opened it up on my tablet, and we'll just pass it around. You can just click through. There's a lot of pictures. Just look at a few of them and pass them on so that everyone can see.
Okay, so I'll pass mine around too. Well charged, and I'll begin. Okay. So it's actually kind of interesting that the story started with India and are ending with India as well. Although they really, the story, my story, ends here in Israel because that was the goal. I'll give you just a little background on Bnei Menashe. I don't know how many of you have heard of Bnei Menashe.
something today.
Today, cool. Okay, okay. So some of you. So the Bnei Menashe, basically, they believe that they are the 10 lost tribes of Menashe, and that they were exiled 27 centuries ago, so almost 3,000 years, and have been lost and not heard from for all of these years, and until the past century, really. And they were discovered. They actually reached out to Israel when Israel was founded, and they said, "Oh, these people are doing kind of like what we're doing." They didn't even know the word Jew, because the word Jew, of course, came after the fact when Yehuda became, the primary tribe. So they didn't even know that word. So when Israel became a state and they heard about it, they said, "Oh, we do things just like them. They seem like us." They had kept Shabbat and Kashrut and a lot of the Chagim and Karbanot. They had kept all these things all these years, in a kind of a primitive sort of way. And it was extensively looked into and determined that they do have these Jewish roots. They do have to convert when they come here. But there's this thriving, beautiful community in northeastern India, and they're coming in little small groups as much as possible. Shavei Israel, which I work for, brings them, and I had the honor and pleasure and privilege of joining a group of 50 of them and bringing them back home. But the story is really the story of going there, and that was really a journey and really quite an adventure. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it. So going there, I've never been to India before. I didn't do the backpacking thing, and I just had never even occurred to me. I know we could go to Florida. That's where we would go. And then I moved to Florida. But anyway, so we came to Israel. That was it. We just kind of stayed. So going to India was really an adventure. I got there, and everything was taken care of. Everybody was so worried. They were like, "Oh, what's going to happen? You're going to be by yourself. How can you go? How are you doing this? All by yourself?" And I'm like, I am going to India. Every single thing that I do, every car I get into, every bottle of water I take to my lips is arranged and organized. Meanwhile, these 50 Bnei Menashe that I'm bringing back here are going to a complete unknown. I mean, they're really the brave ones. Me, this is just, I'm just going along for the ride. When I got there, and there were all these people holding signs, I didn't know where I was going. I'm getting out of the plane. First time in India. I arrived actually in New Delhi. That was the first stop. It was 4 flights to get to where I was going, so it was really a remote region. When I arrived at my first stop, there were people, holding signs for Mr. Singh and Mrs. Punjab and whatever, and then there was somebody that had Laura Ben David, and it said Laura spelled Lora, which is not how I spell my name, it's A-U, and okay, whatever, that didn't faze me at all. But then I found out that my name spelled correctly is actually a not very nice word in India, and she didn't want anyone to think that she was writing that on a paper. I'm like, okay, everybody call me Leora, don't call me Laura. It's not even my name, but just don't call me Laura. Anyways, so it's a really interesting country. As I said, it took a while till I got to where I was going. If you've ever been to India, the drivers. Okay, people talk about Israeli drivers. I'm sorry, Israeli drivers are incredible compared to India. In India, actually, I take that back. The people in India have to be incredible drivers, or they'd be crashing every second. The only I think rule of the road is just to get where you're going. You go around, and you'll see the picture. The first one in my slideshow is a guy sitting on top of the bus with his tie flying. That it's just like whatever goes, and it's very scary because they drive the British way, so the driver is on the right side and passenger. I was sitting in the front left, feeling like I should be stepping on the brakes the whole time, and we're literally swerving. It was very, very scary, but they're really amazing drivers. So I take that back. They're good drivers. They're just crazy. Anyways, so and one more thing that's just to indicate the craziness of this country. It is a third world country. You don't drink the water. You don't eat fresh vegetables. You don't really, you have to really, people get shots. I didn't, but you have to really take care of your health when you're there. Where I went, it was open sewage. I mean, it's really not what we're accustomed to. But I found very ironic that when I arrived after my 4th flight, and I got to this remote region called Manipur, which is a state in northeast India, And they had, I mean, like the committee, they're like foreign arrivals committee, like sitting on like folding chairs, like a folding table and pieces of paper. And they you know, called to me and, you know, oh, you were foreign. I'm like, how did you know? Yeah. I was the only blonde person in the state of Manipur, I think, the whole time I was there. Anyways, they come to us and they, to me and to anyone else who was foreign, and they check our temperature because of the whole Ebola thing, whatever. And then they proceeded to follow us and take our temperature, all the people who were foreign. I was with a few people that I met there, twice a day, every day, the whole time we're in Manipur. We're in this like this remote place with like open sewage, and they're checking our temperatures to see if we're going to make everybody else sick. So we found that very interesting place. Okay, that's that. Now the people, the Bnei Menashe. So we get there, and if you'll see in the pictures, it's beautiful. I mean, yes, it's all that primitive and whatever, but it wasn't primitive in like a yucky way. It was kind of like old-fashioned. It was kind of like Little House on the Prairie in India. It was like that, very rural, very beautiful, rolling hills, very green and rich and beautiful. But yet everybody kind of like built their own house with whatever they had handy, and it looked like that, but in a nice way because everything was neat and clean and. Besides for the open sewage, but okay. Anyways, but you know, we're driving through this place, and I get to, you know, where I'm going. I know that there are Bnei Menashe there because I'm going to get the Bnei Menashe. I'm bringing them. I know that there's a thriving community because I've heard about it. But yet, when I arrived, I was in shock. I got there, and you'll see on there's this Bruchim Habaim sign, and I saw it, and I saw these cute little kids with payas and tzitzis and big kippahs and whatever. And I was like, oh wow, they really, you know, they're Jewish. You know, this is all the way out in Manipur, and you know, there are these Jewish people who look Jewish, and there were a couple. And then I walked in. There was a ceremony when I came, not for me, but there was a ceremony, and I was there. And I walked in, and there were hundreds of them, like a lot of hundreds. There were so many people, and all of them were with the kippahs and the tzitzis, and the women were covering their hair and you know, looking really religious, you know, very tzadua, very modest, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, look at these people, like they're here and they're doing it, and they're living this Jewish committed life out here in Manipur. There's nothing here. How are they doing this? And I was really quite amazed. What was incredible is their commitment and dedication. You know, it's really kind of against all odds. They had actually, in the past, in like, you know, 100 years or even 150 years, missionaries had come through from England and from Great Britain, and they had basically converted everybody, all of the Bnei Menashe. They had said, you know, okay, oh, you guys are monotheists, unlike all the pagans around, you know, great, this is really what you're supposed to do, and you know, and they converted them. And for a lot of them, it took, and they're Christian, to this day they're Christian, but for a lot of them, it just didn't feel right. They were like, this isn't right, this is not, you know, so they kind of like went along with it because they didn't know any better. They were, you know, in this, just, you know, out there by themselves and didn't really have the background to stand up to it. But then, as I said, when Israel was founded and finally news of Jews came all the way to their little remote village in Manipur, and they were like, that's what we are, and they connected. And it took them many, many years actually to reach out to the government of Israel, which they finally, the finale, the grand finale was making Aliya with these people. And again, as I said, I worked in Nefesh Benefesh. I've been on many Aliya flights. I made my own, and it's an incredible, incredible experience. But when you're on an Aliya flight with 50 people who have never been on a plane before, it's a completely different experience. None of them had ever been to Israel. They'd never been on a plane. They'd probably never been to an airport. I mean, you know, it's not like with the what do you call it? Ethiopians. You know, it's a different, like they had cell phones. They had, you know, it was a different. They're modern, but at the same time, they live in their remote area and they just didn't really go anywhere. They were so excited. They were so happy. When they got out, this is, I'll show you the video, but it's on my phone and it's on whatever. But when they got out, when we arrived in Israel, they have their own songs, they have their own traditions, their own, you know, everything. And they have this beautiful song that is in their language, Kuki, and there's actually a couple dialects, but the ones I was with, they speak Kuki. And it's basically a song about their desire for, it's like their Lashon Hava B'Yerushalayim kind of a song, like that type of a thing, or even like a Hatikva type of a song for them. It's their anthem. And we got off the plane. For some reason, they took us off on stairs and went on a bus like they used to do. I don't know why they did it. So we were on the bus, and there's horrible video. I'm like, standing there like this because I'm on the bus, whatever. So it's like shaky. But you can see their emotion and you can feel their emotion. And they sing the song just spontaneously. They just all start singing. And we all just started crying. All of us who were not part of it, they did too. And it's an incredible honor, really, for me to be able to participate in that and to be able to help this incredible, precious, dedicated group of people who all they want in the world is just to be Jewish and live as Jews and live in their homeland. So anyways, with that, I will, I guess, conclude. If you have a chance to just, if the phone makes it around to you, just watch that. It's very, very short, but it's really, really special. So, thank you.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. This is the evening. Okay. I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much to the readers. We all clap again because we're so used to calling them readers, but now we call them storytellers. And you all told such amazing stories. I really, really enjoyed all of you. And I think David might be right that we need to do a part 2. We'll discuss it. We'll discuss that soon. Thank you so much to David for always being amazing to work with. I also do events other places sometimes, and then I can breathe a sigh of relief whenever I do an event here. It's so much less stressful. It's so much better. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to my mother, who was in charge of taking entry today. To Deena, who has been volunteering to photograph my events, which is amazing. Because this is very new what I'm doing, and I'm trying to grow it. I'm working on it, and I do think it's growing. And one of the ways is to actually show people what's going on. And till now, I couldn't really show people, and now it's really, really helpful. And thank you so much to Effie for always videotaping my events. Thank you. And thank you all for coming out in this crazy weather. I'm so impressed. And I knew you would come. I knew it. I didn't lose faith. I was actually super excited, like to the last second. Even though some people said, I really felt that people would come, and I'm so happy that you came. Make sure to connect with me online so that you'll hear about my future events. On the back of the program, you can join my mailing list, and you can join my Facebook group where I just post general things that are going on in Jerusalem. And one more thing, as I mentioned in the beginning, I forgot to finish reading the book. Oh, with sister. Okay, we're gonna set up. Yeah, or should we first do? Okay, never mind. Yay! Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Raphael. Happy birthday to you. Okay, we have to read the end of the book and then we're done. Where are you? Where are you, the sister of? I don't know your name. Sister of? So that's it. Here you go. This and that, and we're done. Amazing. Yeah.
And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains. So, be your name Buxbaum or Bixby or Bray or Mordechai, Ali Van Allen O'Shea. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way.